The sun was high over the crowded city square, a place where the sound of rushing traffic clashed with the rhythm of hurried footsteps and the occasional street performer's tune. Among the noise and blur of people, a little girl no older than 10 stood barefoot on the cold stone pavement, clutching a scratched violin that looked as though it had been rescued from a trash heap. Her dress was faded, 2 sizes too big, and her hair was tied in a crooked braid that slipped loose every few minutes. Yet despite her fragile frame, there was something in her eyes, a quiet fire, a hope that refused to be extinguished. Her name was Inara, and she was about to play a note that would change her destiny forever. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to transform lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps spread these stories of hope to more hearts around the world. Inara's small fingers trembled as she positioned the violin under her chin. She wasn't playing for money that day, at least not in the usual sense. She was playing for survival. Her mother had fallen ill months ago, and medical bills had drained what little they had left. Some nights, the child barely ate, but every morning she stood in that square, believing her music could somehow bring enough for them to survive another day. People often ignored her. Others scoffed at the sight of a child scraping imperfect notes out of an old instrument. Still, she played with all the heart she had, her bow pulling against strings that sometimes screeched more than they sang. On that same afternoon, a tall man in an immaculate navy suit stepped out of a luxury car that seemed too polished for the dusty street. His name was Victor Rain, a self-made millionaire whose empire of hotels stretched across the city. He was known as much for his cold demeanor as for his fortune. People whispered that he had once grown up poor, but his rise had hardened him rather than softened him. He believed kindness was weakness, and money was the only true power. As he strode toward the cafe across the square, his sharp eyes caught sight of Inara. At first, he sneered. To him, she looked like just another pitiful street urchin begging for sympathy. A small crowd had gathered, not because she played well, but because her innocent effort tugged faintly at curious hearts. Victor walked closer, his polished shoes clicking on the stone, and with a smirk that cut through the child's concentration, he spoke loudly enough for those around to hear. He told her, with a mocking laugh, that if she could truly move him with her music, he'd adopt her and give her the life she seemed to dream of. The crowd gasped, some laughed nervously, but most shook their heads in disapproval. Inara froze, her tiny hands gripping the violin tighter. For a moment she wanted to run, to disappear into the shadows where humiliation couldn't follow her. But then, she thought of her mother lying weak in bed, whispering encouragement through her pain, reminding her that every note mattered. Tears welled in the girl's eyes, but she raised her bow again. If this arrogant man wanted to be entertained, then she would give him something no money could ever buy, the raw cry of a child's soul through music. As she played, the noise of the city seemed to fade. Her first notes wavered, fragile as glass, but soon they deepened, carrying the weight of hunger, loneliness, and dreams far too big for her small shoulders. The melody swirled with sorrow, yet it lifted with an unspoken plea for hope. People around her grew still, their conversations silenced, as if every heart was suddenly tuned to the same string she was drawing across the violin. A mother clutched her child closer, an elderly man wiped tears he didn't expect, and even the pigeons scattered into the air as if acknowledging something sacred had taken root. Victor stood frozen, his mockery fading from his face. For the first time in years, he felt a lump in his throat. The music seemed to reach into the locked chambers of his memory, dragging out images he had buried, nights when he too had gone to bed hungry, mornings when he had wished for someone to care. He remembered his mother's face, worn but kind, and the lullabies she had hummed even when her stomach was empty. He had thought money had erased those scars, but now, this little girl's trembling bow was reopening them, reminding him of the boy he once was. When the final note lingered in the air, trembling like a prayer, silence engulfed the square. Then applause erupted, not the casual clapping one gives to a street performer, but the thunderous ovation reserved for those who touch something divine. Strangers dropped money at Inara's feet, more than she had ever seen in one day, but her eyes never left Victor. She wasn't seeking approval, only truth. Would he keep his word? Victor's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, he was speechless, stripped of the armor of arrogance. He knew in that instant that his careless mockery had been a cruel mistake, and that this fragile girl had given him something worth more than all the money he owned. A chance at redemption. He knelt slowly, unbuttoning his blazer, and draped it gently over her thin shoulders. The crowd gasped again, but this time with awe. From that day on, Victor's life began to change. He didn't whisk Anara into a mansion overnight, nor did he parade her as a trophy of his generosity. Instead, he visited her and her mother, ensuring they had food, medical care, and stability. He enrolled Anara in a music school, buying her a new violin but keeping the old one preserved as a reminder of the day she had played not just music but the truth of survival. Each week, he sat quietly at the back of her classes, listening as her melodies grew more confident, more radiant. For Anara, life became something she had only dared to dream. Her mother regained strength, and together they built a new home filled with laughter and songs. But the bond between Victor and Anara became something deeper than charity. He found himself becoming the father he had once wished for, and she found in him not a savior, but a listener, someone who believed in her. Months later, she performed at a grand concert hall for the first time, her small figure standing bravely under the spotlight. The audience held their breath as her bow touched the strings, and when she finished, the applause roared like a storm. Cameras flashed, reporters rushed, and yet, in the middle of the celebration, she ran into Victor's arms. With tears streaming down his face, he whispered that she had played her way into his heart long before the world ever heard her. This story reminds us that kindness can be born from even the coldest hearts, that second chances are real, and that sometimes the most extraordinary power lies not in wealth, but in the fragile hands of a child with a dream. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, because the more we spread these stories, the more we inspire the world to believe in compassion again. And before we end, here's a special request. Tell us in the comments what you believe is stronger: money or kindness. Your words might inspire someone else watching today.